Just as an aside, I mean, this is a very poor environmental choice. It is huge electricity costs. It also is taking water paradoxically out of the rivers. But it is assumed or is estimated the environmental costs of this with the electricity cost, which is hundreds of thousands of kilowatts hours per year. You have to plant about 500,000 trees per year just to make it carbon neutral. So if you have this paradox occurring that we think the environment is changing because of the electricity and coal we're burning, this is actually contributing to that because it's very unlikely that amount of trees are ever going to be planted per year. The other thing that I think is really important is I do not think this process has been tested in any way that is likely to be introduced in Canberra. Singapore is put up as an example, and in fact you see plenty of people drinking bottled water from Singapore. The reality is that only 1% of the water that Singapore recycles goes into their drinking water. The rest is used for industry, mainly their computer chip manufacturing industry. They have separate pipelines for their drinking water and the recycled water. I often wonder why they even bother putting 1% in, because it's, you know, it's almost a non-contribution. I presume that is done for political reasons. But there is not a population there that is exposed to this. So to do any health studies on them and say, look, it's safe, to me is meaningless because such a small percentage is used. Now the other argument is, well, all the people in London are drinking water that's gone through 5 kidneys already. Again, that is misleading. I might say if you live in London or most of those European cities, the last thing you do is drink water out of the tap. You actually drink bottled water. But that aside, if you look at the amount of water that goes in and the dilution from rain and other sources, it is very diluted before anybody ever drinks it. So there's no way 1 part of water that you drink went through 5 other people. So, you know, the examples they give, I think, are not really accurate. In the US, they recycle this water and they put it into aquifers, which means groundwater. The reason they have to do that is they've taken so much water out of those aquifers before that if they don't, salt water will come in from the Pacific Ocean and ruin their fresh water. So they have no choice but to regenerate it. It's also interesting, I didn't realise how dry California is. Our average rainfall here is 600 millimetres a year. California, it's 300. So they have half our rainfall. So again, I do not argue that you should never use this technology. You are in a really low rainfall area like California, Southwest Africa. You may well have to do this because your rainfall is so low. But I do not believe that's the situation in Canberra. I think if you look at the average flows, and even the worst case predictions from CSIRO talk about a 30% reduction in inflows into our rivers. Well, if we get on average 210 gigalitres a year into our dams now, and that's the current dams, even a 30% reduction means we're still going to get about 150 gigalitres. Even without water restrictions, we only use 65. So there is more than enough there. We're only in trouble if our inflows drop 70 or 80%. Now, admittedly, in 2006 they did that. But Australia is a land of drought and floods. We have to have enough storage capacity that we can see through the bad years. And I might say, I think if they build the bigger Cotter Dam or whatever other storage capacity, we will probably, I believe, not have a problem. The other argument, we're really in trouble if we continue to have as low inflows as we did in 2006, and I agree. If we continue to have 2006 inflows of only 22, 25 gigalitres, we're in trouble. This proposal is not going to fix that. We're going to run out of water well and truly before this is on stream. We have to think of other things to save water other than relying on this. And I don't think anybody will say that our long-term inflows are going to be anything like that continuously. I might say if it is that bad, the whole Murray-Darling system is literally up the creek. So we'll all have to move to northern Queensland, I think. So in summary, my basic reason that I think this is a bad proposal is that I think it is unnecessary in Canberra. They are talking about 9 gigalitres being used in this process initially and 20 gigalitres. Just last year in 2006, we let 15 or 17 gigalitres of water out of our dams as environmental or river flows. Now we need to learn from the 2006 and in fact halve that and not actually maybe let more than 4 gigalitres of water out during drought periods of time, or drought periods. The proposal they've got, well, what they're doing now is by pumping water out of the Small Cotter Dam, which has only got about 4 gigalitre capacity, through across to the Googong, that in fact gives us another potentially 10 gigalitres a year, more so than we've had previously. So there's another way you can save. I also believe if we find other ways of substituting potable water, which means drinking water, by recycling or doing something else so that we water Parliament House with water that's not, drinking water, we must be able to save 4 or 5 or even 10 gigalitres of water a year. So again, we don't have to take the risk of reusing this recycled water in our drinking water. So, in summary again, I think this is a high-risk procedure that in Canberra we have lots of other alternatives. If we get smart, we look better, so that we can recycle, but we don't take the risk to our population of putting this water into our drinking water with the risk that something will go wrong every now and again.